It begins with a black speck in a white sky, a blip over the Beaufort Sea that turns from maybe weather to definitely not weather in a heartbeat. Engines spin up at an Arctic base. A controller's voice comes flat and calm. Tracks 2. Vectors set. Out on the tarmac, crews move like a well-practiced ritual. Quiet hands, loud machines, and a horizon that is both a border and a dare. This is Canada's front line, where geography meets great power ambition at -30, and the wind tries to tear your eyelashes off just for fun. Most maps make Canada look empty. That's a cartographer's lie. Those vast spaces are full of routes, choke points, seabed cables, air corridors, and a polar gateway that shortcuts the planet. The Canadian Armed Forces don't get to pick a single theatre. They get all of them. 3 oceans, a continent, and an air defence system fused with the United States through NORAD. If the world is a chessboard, Canada is playing on every file at once. Sometimes as the Queen, sometimes as the Bishop, always as the piece that makes your opponent hesitate. Start with the numbers, because they shape the story. Canada's defence spending historically sits below the NATO average as a share of GDP, but in raw dollars, it ranks comfortably among the top 20 worldwide. Compare it with peers. Australia often hovers around 2% of GDP with a hard Indo-Pacific focus. Italy lands in the mid-1% range with Mediterranean commitments. Canada aims its spending at continental defence, Arctic surveillance, and high-end interoperability. The result is a capability power, less about sheer mass and more about putting the right tools in the right place at the right time. That approach is written across the sky in stealth letters. 88 F-35A Lightning II fighters replacing aging Hornets. Canada isn't just buying jets, it's buying a data machine that sees first, shares first, and shoots second, because the first two often solve the problem. The transition includes hardened facilities, secure networks, and a training pipeline that puts pilots and maintainers on a generational upgrade curve. Think of it as switching from binoculars and walkie-talkies to a fused sensor web, where every aircraft contributes to a common picture. Beside the fighters come the long-range watchers, P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft. These are the submariner's worst nightmare, and the convoy commander's best friend. Their speciality is anti-submarine warfare. Sonobuoys listening in stacked curtains, radar skimming waves for periscopes, torpedoes ready for the moment a trail turns into a fix. For a nation straddling the North Atlantic and North Pacific, where Russian and increasingly capable Asian submarines prowl, the P-8 turns cold water into a readable map. And then there are the eyes that never blink. MQ-9B Sky Guardian, remotely piloted aircraft. Persistent ISR over ocean approaches, Arctic patrol lanes, or domestic emergencies is not glamorous, but it's how you turn surprise into a scheduled event for the other guy. With precision weapons available, those drones aren't just scouts, they're sentries with teeth. Pair them with Canada's CC-330 Husky tanker fleet, airborne gas stations derived from the A330, and you get what every strategist craves: endurance. Fighters refuel and stay on CAP. Patrol aircraft stretch missions. The map suddenly feels smaller. Power doesn't live in the air alone. At sea, the Royal Canadian Navy lives in 2 calendars at once. On today's calendar, 12 Halifax-class frigates carry most of the load, escorting, hunting submarines, interdicting smugglers, and sailing with allied carrier groups. 6 Harry de Wolfe-class Arctic and offshore patrol vessels underpin sovereignty in the high north, with ice strengthening and endurance that turns presence into policy. Logistics is the other half of naval power, and the Protector-class joint support ships are the quiet guarantors of it, replenishing fuel, ammo, and morale, so a task group can keep its rhythm beyond the horizon. On tomorrow's calendar, the Canadian surface combatant River-class destroyers, based on the Type 26 design, promises a leap in quieting, sensors, and area air defense. It's expensive. It's slow to build. It's also the ticket to relevance in the 2030s and beyond, when undersea threats get stealthier and skies busier. A modern anti-submarine destroyer is not a luxury for a 3-ocean navy. It's the price of admission. Under the waves, the story gets even more interesting. Canada's 4 Victoria-class submarines are aging, but still deliver the kind of value that only a submarine can, training allies, shadowing quietly, and turning up in places where attention spans go to die. The Canadian Patrol Submarine Project maps the future: modern, conventionally powered boats with the range and under-ice credibility a Northern Navy needs. The debate leans toward designs proven in harsh waters. Think advanced German or South Korean families, because the Arctic doesn't give retests. The timeline matters. Keep the Victorias relevant into the mid-2030-50s, field the new class before the gap yawns, and you preserve the most asymmetric deterrent Canada owns. Switch to land, where myths multiply. No, Canada doesn't field colossal armoured cores. What it does field is a credible, deployable mix built around LAV 6.0 infantry fighting vehicles, Leopard 2 tanks, and a growing cluster of support, command and recovery platforms that keep columns alive. The sharper change, and the most relevant to how wars look today, is air defence. After a decade-long gap, short-range air defence is back. The RBS-70 NG system gives units a laser-guided sting against low-flying jets and helicopters, and, crucially, provides a hard-kill option for many drones. Add dedicated counter-UAS kits with sensors, jammers and shooters scaled to those buzzing Class 1 nightmares, and Canada is relearning the art of fighting under a hostile sky. That sky is not just a battlefield, it's a classroom. The Ukraine war taught every NATO army that cheap drones can do expensive damage, and that cruise missiles exploit gaps like water finds a crack. Canada's answer is layered. NORAD at the pointy end helps units breathe. Ground-based air defence projects aim to restore broader coverage. On the aerospace side, NORAD modernization stretches detection further north, with over-the-horizon radar. Fighter squadrons carry advanced missiles, and tankers keep orbits alive. The message is simple. The lock is going back on the door, with an alarm and a camera this time. Speaking of NORAD, nothing captures Canada's frontline reality like the binational watch floor, where Canadian and American officers live in each other's headsets. The partnership is not just a treaty, it's muscle memory. When a Russian long-range bomber probes an air defense identification zone, the scramble is choreographed. When a mysterious balloon drifts across the map, that choreography becomes a case study in rapid cross-border decision-making. And when planners talk about hypersonics or stealthy cruise missiles sneaking along the curvature of the Earth, Canada's northern radar curtain and space-to-surface sensor fusion turn from PowerPoint slides into paychecks. Of course, numbers still matter, so let's square them with some peers. Canada's active duty force is smaller than Italy's, but comparable in quality, with reserves that backstop domestic operations. Australia fields fewer personnel overall, but concentrates intensely on maritime and air denial in the Indo-Pacific. Canada spreads capability across 3 coasts and continental defence. In raw defence budgets, Canada lands in the middle of the G7, below the US and UK, above many others, and it over-indexes on multinational interoperability. If you want a coalition to plug together quickly, you want Canadian kit and Canadian staff officers in the room early. Now, a quick reality check on recruiting and retention. Like most Western forces, the CAF faces a tough labour market, ageing platforms, and some cultural scar tissue it has promised to heal. The leadership knows that modernisation is not just hardware, it's people. That's why you'll see accelerated training pathways, streamlined medicals, and a broader effort to pull in talent that might not have seen itself in uniform 10 years ago. The goal isn't to lower standards, it's to seek excellence in more places. Which brings us to an anecdote that says more than a spreadsheet. During a Northern sovereignty exercise, a Southern infantry platoon found itself caught between a whiteout that erased the world and satellite comms that decided the Aurora was more interesting than bandwidth. The tech stack looked great on the slide. Blue Force trackers, ISR snippets, even an occasional weather model piped from a faraway desk. None of it solved the immediate problem of left or right of the ridge that doesn't exist anymore. A Canadian Ranger Corporal, a woman whose grandfather taught her how to read wind lines when she was 12, found the past by taste and memory and the hunch you only get after 1,000 miles on a snowmobile. She put a platoon through a gap the satellite didn't see. That's modernization. Canadian style. Sensors plus people whose senses are already tuned to the land. Special operations are the force's quiet exclamation mark. CANSOFCOM binds Joint Task Force 2, the Canadian Special Operations Regiment, 427 Special Operations Aviation Squadron, and CJRU, the National CBRN Response Element. The command trains for the missions you hear about only when they go wrong. Hostage rescue, time-sensitive raids, surgical reconnaissance that turns an entire campaign, and the nightmare scenario of chemical or radiological incidents. What makes Canadian SOF so valuable isn't just skill, it's fluency. Plug and play with Five Eyes partners, NATO brigades, and interagency teams, from the Baltics to the Caribbean. In a world where speed beats size, these are the units that move faster than the news cycle.
Domestic operations are the other half of legitimacy. Floods, fires, ice storms. The CAF spends a lot of days saving Canadians from the land they love. Search and rescue crews launch into weather the rest of us pronounce with a shiver, dragging survivors out of mountains, oceans, and frozen nowhere. Strategic lift aircraft carry relief halfway around the world on Tuesday and a cavalry squadron on Wednesday. If you judge a military by how it treats its own backyard, Canada's earns respect the hard way. None of this works without industry. Halifax-class sustainment keeps frigates relevant with block upgrades. Davie and Irving keep the shipyards humming. Munitions lines matter again, from artillery shells to air-to-air missiles. Tactical radios, satellite time, and secure networks might be the least photogenic line items in a budget, but they're what turns a multinational brigade from a logo parade into a combined arms organism. Expect more investment in joint fires, common data fabrics, and what planners politely call kill webs, the nervous system of a modern force. Now, let's talk geopolitics with fewer euphemisms. Russia's Northern Fleet shelters ballistic missile submarines behind layered air defences and maritime patrols in the Barents and Arctic seas. Those patrols spill into the GI-UK Gap and the North Atlantic, where they threaten the artery between North America and Europe. China, meanwhile, doesn't need Arctic bases to complicate Canada's life. It can build dual-use presence in science and shipping, eye the polar Silk Road, and put holes in northern waters during melt windows. The Arctic is not a postcard. It's an emerging economic and military highway. Canada's answer, Arctic patrol ships, modern destroyers, P-8s, F-35s, over-the-horizon radar, persistent drones, is not a wish list. It's a map of how to stay a step ahead. Allies notice. In Latvia, Canada doesn't just send a flag. It leads the multinational brigade, anchoring NATO's deterrence. That leadership teaches staff work under pressure, integrating artillery, engineers, aviation, and ground units from a dozen nations into a tempo that survives friction. It is not glamorous to run a brigade main command post in a forest, with a million radios competing with a million trees. But it is exactly the muscle memory a coalition needs on day one of a crisis. The same logic applies at sea, where Canadian frigates plug seamlessly into US and UK carrier strike groups, and in the air, where Canadian fighters sit the same tapes and run the same tactics as their closest partners. Common myths deserve a short, sharp rebuttal. Canada is just peacekeepers. History says otherwise. The force specializes in deterrence and coalition warfare from the Baltics to blue water, with peace support as one tool, not the whole toolbox. Underfunded equals ineffective. It's true that the burden share trails the NATO average. It is also true that targeted investments in sensors, ASW, and 5th-gen aviation produce outsized returns. Small equals small impact. Ask any admiral how much a single P-8 sortie can change a hunt, or any NORAD director how important a credible Arctic radar picture is when minutes matter. Let's sharpen the human element with one more vignette. A Cyclone maritime helicopter lifts off a frigate rolling in winter seas. The crew is chasing a faint trace, maybe a diesel boat, maybe a trick of thermoclines. The sensor operator rides the display like a surfer reading a wave, dipping the sonar, chasing an echo, cross-referencing with a P-8's buoy field miles away. The pilot keeps station in wind that wants to fold the rotor. Over the link, an American destroyer calls for an update. A British frigate adjusts its sprint and drift.
For a few minutes, everyone's map becomes one map. The contact is classified. The lesson is not. Interoperability is not a slogan, it's a lifesaver.
Canadian intercept calls may include please and thank you, but the AMRAAM still pronounces no in all languages. The Rangers do not, officially, fuel snowmobiles with maple syrup. Unofficially, don't test their patience before breakfast. Arctic summer is that magical day you wear a lighter parka and chip slightly less ice off a 25mm mount. Humor keeps you warm. Well, warmer. Zoom back to the ledger. Strengths: world-class air interoperability, serious anti-submarine ambition, a maturing Arctic surface presence, special operations that play well with others, and logistics that punch above population size. Challenges: recruiting, aging fleets, shipyard throughput, the sheer cost of modern sensors and missiles, and the need to harden bases and networks against precision strikes and cyber mischief. Direction of travel: up. The money line is bending toward big, long-life capabilities, rather than short-term optics. The doctrine is shifting from do everything a bit to excel exactly where allies need us most. Training ties the bow. Pilots run 5th-gen tactics with US and European squadrons. Submarine crews gather lessons from allies who live underwater. Army brigades learn to hide from drones, jam them, and kill them, while artillery relearns massed fires with precision sprinkles. Cyber defenders practice the unglamorous art of keeping lights on and data clean during storms, natural and man-made. Space operators manage satellites and services that keep Blue Dots honest in the worst weather on Earth. The future fight will punish the slow and the siloed. Canada is trying to be neither. So, how insanely powerful is the Canadian military? If power is the ability to force outcomes, Canada does it by allying faster, by making a coastline visible, by making a submarine think twice, and by making an adversary wonder what else they didn't see on that radar sweep. It is the kind of power that rarely shouts, but answers the phone at awful hours with exactly the capability the moment demands. If being polite, bilingual, and punctual could win wars, Canada would already be a hyperpower. Since they can't, Canada is building something better, a force that sees first, arrives fast, and stays long, even when the runway is ice and the sun forgot to rise. That's sane strength in an insane world. Your turn. What surprised you most about Canada's military? The Arctic radar curtain, the submarine ambitions, the Latvian leadership, or the way drones and tankers quietly change everything? Drop your take in the comments. Argue like Canadians, fiercely, clearly, and with just enough sorry to keep it friendly.